I did my second review on the PS4 exclusive Spider-Man, and now I'm back with another Sony exclusive Spider-Man game. And while it may be playable on the PS4, I decided to wait until I got a PS5 to play and then review this game. Not only did it take so long for me to get around to making this review because of that, but I was also revamping my channel, which took months to do, but man, was it worth it. So without further ado,
Alright people, let's do this one last time. This here is Miles Morales, Peter Parker's successor. He was bitten by a radioactive spider, and temporarily he is the one and only Spider-Man in New York City because Peter Parker went out of the country. He lost his father, wait, not his Uncle Aaron? Well, yeah, if we're talking about Into the Spider-Verse, then yeah, Uncle Aaron did die, but in this game's canon, Uncle Aaron stays alive and Miles' father dies in the events of the previous game. Fast forward to the start of this game, Miles and Peter, well before Peter went out of the country for his girlfriend Mary Jane, take down Rhino and some prison inmates. Peter then leaves New York for a time, and what Miles ends up having to deal with is Roxxon Power Company, who I thought was run by Eddie Brock at first, and the criminal organization, The Underground. And they are both at war with each other. Starting with Roxxon. Roxxon is a power company with eventual plans to be the power source for New York City. With the company's own army, they go after Spider-Man either because he was at the wrong place at the wrong time, or the company had stuff to hide and did not want Spider-Man finding out. The game does not explain that very well. The Underground, on the other hand, only wants notoriety, but is led by the Tinkerer, who is Finn Mason, who is also the childhood friend of Miles. Finn wants to get back at Roxxon because the company is responsible for the death of her brother after Finn and her brother found out that the energy source, Nuform, was toxic and makes people sick. Although the game hardly goes into any detail on the kind of sickness. But yeah, Roxxon tries to cover that up. Miles, aka Spider-Man, deals with one final confrontation of his friend the Tinkerer, but unfortunately, Finn dies though. As for Roxxon, well, Simon the leader gets arrested. And okay, so the story is not as grand as the previous game, but I still enjoyed it as it was a more personal story for Miles, considering that he had a conflict with a good friend of his. I would have liked more clarification on the effects of Nuform, kind of like how Devil's Breath in the previous game affects people, as I would know the stakes and I would have more of a reason to go up against Roxxon, unless it's a common sickness like Finn's brother coughing before his death. As for the Underground, well, the title criminal organization explains itself, although I do like how Finn, aka the Tinkerer, is handled. The game does a good job of developing Miles and Finn's friendship throughout, and even if you don't approve of Finn's actions as the Tinkerer, you would still understand her point of view, which makes her not just another comic book supervillain, but rather closer to fighting with a friend, making it more personal. As for Miles Morales being Spider-Man, I would say I like him about as much as Peter Parker. The way I see it, both Peter Parker and Miles Morales both represent different aspects of the Spider-Man character. Peter Parker deals with the responsibility aspect of Spider-Man, whereas Miles deals with the mental aspect of being the superhero. Miles is not the unpopular school kid like Peter Parker, but he often does get compared to Peter Spider-Man by the people in the game. Although, Peter definitely encourages Miles when he needs it. That is why Miles Morales grew on me pretty quickly. I enjoyed his character in Into the Spider-Verse, and I enjoy his character here as well. If you enjoyed the Spider-Man 2 game and the Batman Arkham games, you will feel right at home. If you enjoyed the previous game, then you'll feel right at home and have some deja vu. This game is still an open world action adventure game with main story and side objectives. The combat is similar to the previous game with hand-to-hand combat, dodging, and the use of webs. I can't believe I said it took cues from the Batman Arkham games when Spider-Man 2 did something similar, but anyway. Suits are still fun to unlock, and I definitely like these suits. And oh, look at the kitty in the backpack. That's so adorable. Makes me think of Persona 5. What Miles can do that Peter Parker can't do is he has electric base attacks, which is super useful for powerful punches and even cause an electrical explosion with Miles' personal bubble. And no, this does not make the game too easy. In fact, it's required for some enemies. He can also turn invisible, which is definitely useful in those stealth sections when you're caught by the enemy, but as fun as these stealth sections are, I realized the game was oversaturated with them when they were common in some of the side missions. Now, how about the bosses? I find the boss fights rather lacking as I find myself dodging, attacking, with an occasional web shooter here and there and so forth. Man, I really did say that about the previous game, didn't I? Well, in the case of this game, I was just about to say this game had no boss fights until it got closer to the end. The final boss was pretty good, but I really enjoyed the boss fight with the Prowler. Definitely an improvement from the last game. The Prowler uses different tactics from other enemies by turning invisible himself when you're hitting him and creating duplicates of himself, making his boss fight unique mechanically rather than just dodging, attacking. There's also a pretty good optional boss fight at the end of one questline with the Vulture. It's at the end of Peter's training segments. As far as the side quest goes, some of it's really standard, such as collecting things and beating down enemies and more of those stealth sections. Nothing wrong with the stealth sections, but again, there's a lot of them. There are two quest lines that I really like though. I really like the side quest where you search for sounds to mix a song together. Like, I dropped everything to do that quest line. There is also the scavenger hunt set up by Miles' dad. That's also pretty fun. As fun as this game is though, and as much as I love swinging around New York City, what prevents me from giving this game a 9 is how short it is. The game can be beaten in less than 10 hours. Or if you're a busy person or not an RPG person because of how long RPGs tend to be, then this might be to your benefit. I, on the other hand, like my games long. And what's disappointing to me is if you do most of the side quests, you see most of what the game has to offer in 15 hours. If it were DLC to the previous game, it would be pretty large DLC, but as a full-fledged game, with retail price, it's a pretty small game, which then makes me back and forth between a 7 and an 8. The reason why I said it was worth the wait to get the PS5 is because seeing 60 frames a second makes me not want to go back down to 30 frames per second. Yes, I did go for the performance option, and while ray tracing does provide impressive lighting and reflections, I played Control on my PC months back to try out the ray tracing, and the dip from 60 FPS to 30 FPS is something I see first before anything else. And also, Sony boasted about quick load times on the PS5, and while I do have a laptop from 2017 with an SSD, I was still impressed with how fast this game loads on PS5. Here, have a look for yourself. See what I mean? I did not crop that or anything. That is actually how fast the game loads on PS5. And of course, the game has more graphical fidelity on PS5. The soundtrack to the first game really did not stick out to me that much, but another reason why Miles Morales, the character, grew on me quickly is he has good taste in music. I really liked Into the Spider-Verse's soundtrack, and I liked this game's soundtrack as well. I should have known the soundtrack to this game was going to be good when I heard the beatboxing in the title screen. Not only that, but one of my go-to rap artist Lecrae contributed a couple of songs to the soundtrack. I give this game a 7.5 out of 10. It is definitely a fun game that's worth playing with a good main scenario and a couple of good quest lines, along with some standard stuff of course. While I did not 100% the game, you can experience the most of what the game has to offer in 15 hours. It still had what I liked about the previous game, but in a smaller package. I would say Spider-Man Miles Morales is a pretty good launch title for the PS5. A couple of things that are improved from the last game are the soundtrack and the boss fights. If you have a PS5 at the time this video uploaded, then you already played this game, I'm sure. But if you are considering the PS4 version or are watching this video a few years into the PS5's life cycle or later and still have not played this game yet, I would suggest waiting for a price drop because $50 or is $70, whatever, is a bit steep for a single player game this short. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment below what you think of the game.
Thank you all for watching and have a blessed day.